It's pretty crazy when you think about it. But in a week as amazing as this one was for anime, I mean, the latest Dawn to Dawn episode was heat. I mean, Dragon Ball Daima came out with one of the best action episodes of the year. So many great shows in so many different genres of all just excellence. And once again, for now, the 10th week in a row, basically, a little anime about a group of characters staring at the sky and trying to learn the truth, the secrets of their universe in a time period that is desperately trying to restrict knowledge and access, especially to those of, commoner bloodlines, remains to be not only the best episode of the week, but solidifies itself as anime of the year. And as I say, I take no further questions. If you disagree with that, it's okay to be wrong. I mean, plenty of people have been wrong back in the day, too, about the truth of the universe and the Earth being the center of it. It's okay not to recognize anime of the year when it looks you and basically bites you right in the face. I have full live reactions over on Patreon if you want to see my full and good thought to any of this Orb masterpiece greatness over there exclusively. So, kind of an insane episode. Pretty big bombshells dropped. I think there was two equally big ones, but there was a lot of smaller ones that I think you can make an argument were big as well. Like the fact that Budeni actually gave a homeless man change, which shook me to my core. But the two big ones were that back in the day, Budeni actually killed someone, and, self-defense and everything seemingly, but still kind of wild that someone who is, a confessed murderer is allowed to join the church. Like, it's like, okay, sure, the church is saying it, so we gotta believe it, but isn't that a little sus, especially given how much they are a stickler to the rules? But the second big one was actually the fact that Ochi comes, because it's kind of like ridiculous. Because if it actually is finished, which I don't think it is, but the idea, like, imagine saying, hey, you're gonna dig us a tunnel, so if someday we have to retreat, we have an escape rope. It's smart. My boy's been digging a tunnel for how long? And he comes up and he's like, yeah, you can have the barn back. I'm done with the research. And I'm like, what? There's no way you're done with the research. One, because we're not even at the halfway point of the story yet. I mean, we're close to the halfway point. But then again, if they did go the route of making it finished, would then the rest of the story be trying to convince the world of it? I guess that would make sense, but I don't know. But I think my favorite part of the show, and if you've been watching the videos, this isn't the first time I've mentioned something like this, but the first moment similar to this that we had was when Raffle tripped, and, the idea basically like, how can you convince people that, in fact, things aren't moving around us, but maybe we're moving around them? It's ridiculous when you look, because you can look at the sky and say, no, see, they're moving. We physically see them moving. But, when Raffle trips and the tree looks like it's moved, and when he gets his balance, he realizes, well, the tree didn't move at all. In fact, the tree stayed exactly where it is. It's I who moved, and it kind of opens his eyes. It's a very simple explanation, but it's one of those, it's easier to convince someone of something that's kind of game changing with their perspective on something simplistic versus a heavily detailed explanation more often than not. I mean, I think I can speak for many people who, when Bill Nye the Science Guy used to get rolled into the classrooms, there's a reason why kids knew a lot more about science when he was on versus the science teacher, is all I'm gonna say. But the idea that it happens again in this episode with the necklace, so that orb necklace, it's hanging on two just nails or whatever, and he uses that as a way to do motion, a circular motion, and that starts kind of like the chain reaction of his brain blast moment. And I love those moments because it's easy for a character to think out loud and say a bunch of intelligent shit, and the viewer could sit there and saying, yeah, I guess that makes sense, but do I actually understand what he's saying, or am I just agreeing because he's saying it with enough confidence? But when you give those simple, detailed visuals, it makes you say, oh, I completely get what he's saying. And I love that for these characters, as smart as they are, most of the time, their revelations come through the most basic observations that is just kind of hidden in plain sight, and I really enjoy that about it. The interesting thing was that they once again focus on a new character. Well, not new in the way that, like, he's been on screen before, but this was like the dude who was kind of, I forget his name, but he essentially is like trying to, kind of bond with Budeni, and he's pretty much like, oh, hey, did you read this? Or did you read this? And he's really trying to like get in on his good side and, maybe learn from him. And Budeni, with the way he is pretty much like, stop, you're lower bloodline, you don't deserve this. And that's kind of his characteristic, is that he's like, hey, You know, like, he was upset that Ochi was learning to read and write because, blasphemy. A commoner? Could you imagine if everyone could read and write? The lies that would get spread. It's like, no, bro. With a proper education, more truths will be out there. It's very interesting when you look at, like, how back in the day, it's like, they wanted to, you know, limit education and, you know, intelligence as much as possible so that a select few could continue to rule over. And then it felt like we kind of broke away from that. And now you look at today's society and how they're trying to limit education again. It's like, god damn, it's a damn circle of, like, you break through and then it regresses and then it breaks through. And it's so infuriating because, but then he's like one of the best characters, but he's stuck in that in-between phase of, like, he's both a great example of what's wrong with this time period, but he's also progressing past it. But he's so stuck in his ways that he's, like, almost wanting to refuse. But I do feel like the end of the episode was a little better because, you know, we had the whole bread moment where he's like, why would you feel like his whole, like, this is like the best example of his core beliefs. Why would you give bread to these homeless people? It's not going to get you closer to heaven. It's like, oh, I don't know, bro, because maybe it's a good thing to do, because if you have the ability to help those that are less fortunate, it's just a good, it's not about gaining something, it's about just being good. Like, and it's infuriating because it's such a common belief, especially in this time period. I mean, and there's a lot of these beliefs that are still seen today, but I think, you know, it's just so interesting how much he both represents the morals of the church in this time period, but also completely trying to go against them. And that's what makes it such an interesting character dynamic. Though granted, anytime they start focusing on a character for more than a couple of minutes like they did in this episode, that's a little newer, I'm just like, well, you got a death flag, because every 3 episodes you're eliminating someone that I'm like, oh, I want to see more of him. And that's how I was feeling about this too. It's like, oh, this is an interesting guy that maybe will help, but Danny is, no, he's just gonna die probably, is what I'm learning. And then the end of the episode comes in and it feels like I'm looking at a cult about to do some crazy shit. The show's getting real good, and the fact that he's so confident he finished the theory says one of two things. Either now it's about trying to get that theory widespread knowledge, or it's not as finished as he thinks. And it'll be interesting if that's the case, if a commoner like maybe Ochi or another is the reason why he realizes it was incomplete, and what that would do to his mental psyche, given that he thinks commoners should stay in their lane. Great episode. Anime of the year remains to be anime of the year. And you know I'll take no further questions. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, full live reactions over on Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Stephen Thomas, Danny0119, Coconut Gang, MJ Minion, Azoff Montgomery, Migs021, James Wright, and we also have Fox Girl, so I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. Y'all have a good one.